Hi there, Brandy. Welcome to the Pro YouTube channel. It's nice talking to
Hi.
you again. How have you been?
Nice to see you again. I have been well. Thank you.
What's the weather like in Texas?
It is beautiful today. It's going back and forth from all four seasons in one day to extremely humid and hot, but it's beautiful. I'm outside. I'm sure you can hear the birds chirping.
Oh, that's nice. Well, we've had a bit of rain here, but generally it's also been fairly good.
It's much needed, right?
Yes,
Much needed rain.
true, because this is such a dry country. I was talking to you the other day, and we were saying that people who leave South Africa only become aware when they're outside the country of just how abnormal and dysfunctional the situation is here regarding the crime and the violence and the insecurity. Now, have you met people like that? Or do you know people like that?
Yes, yes. And, you know, for me on the outside looking in, when I read the crime statistics, that the murder rate's 36 of 100,000, and the only 8% of those are solved. That to me is insane. Um, Normally a government would take steps to rectify that, or revamp the entire police force, right? That's unacceptable. And I have a friend, and she's from South Africa, and she said something to me one time, is that many of the people there, even the ones that admit to the things that are happening and that know what's happening, that they are in a state of denial because they live it every day, and it came on slowly, and that they often think that, well, it's not that bad. We just don't go out. And she told me that it wasn't until they moved here that she really realized how bad it was from the outside looking in, and that it's not normal to live in that state every day. That at night, they didn't have bars on their windows and they were petrified. They didn't sleep at first. They stacked things in front of their door. Even though they didn't have a need to here, it was so ingrained, that fear, that it took a very long time to adjust.
Well, I think I can identify with that because, I go to Europe fairly regularly, and say if I'm in Stockholm, Sweden, or I'm out in the French countryside, for the first few days, I still have the sense of imminent danger that I have here in South Africa. Where you're always careful and where you park your car and what people you see in the street, and are there any potential assailants coming at you. And then it takes a few days, and then you start relaxing, and you also then become quite careless about, locking doors and, um, being on the lookout for any potential danger. And you also start trusting the people around you. Whereas in South Africa, you can hardly trust anybody around you,
Right.
any stranger in the street. You don't know if he's friend or foe. Whereas, if I'm in the French countryside, I know that the next person uh, I'm going to meet, I can probably trust him. I can probably ask him to maybe, look after my child for 10 minutes, or, if he comes up to me and said, I suddenly need €5, but I'll pay you back tomorrow, I'll probably lend him the €5 because I'll trust him to pay it back. Whereas here in
Right?
South Africa, you're just being scammed all the time or attacked, or, we live
Oh,
in
I know.
such a dishonest criminal society that you've got to be, you're almost on tenterhooks all the time. And as you say, that's not normal.
No, it's a constant state of being on guard, of looking over your shoulder, of always needing to act strategically. That takes a toll, I think, on a person's mind, to always feel that you have to be on the defense and be ready for the worst coming. I can't imagine living that way. I really can't. It's to me, I see it as living in a predatory environment, where you're either predator or prey. And that if you're not looking over your shoulder, then you are going to most likely become a victim. And it's very sad. And I know this is for not only whites, but all, law-abiding citizens in South Africa, um, I know suffer because of the crime.
Yes, you're quite right. And that image you have of you're either a predator or a prey, I think that sums it all up. But it also seems to me that we become conditioned to accept this. We're almost like those three dogs in the experiment by the American psychologist Seligman in the 1960s, where the third dog that is conditioned to accept pain. The first dog has a choice of whether he's got the choice to accept the pain and the electric shocks when they place him in a box like that, because he can jump out. The second dog can't jump out, but he can control the pain and the electric shocks by pressing a lever. So he's got some control over his environment. But the third dog doesn't have an option. He just gets conditioned to accept the pain. And when eventually he is given the option of being able to escape and to jump out of the box, he doesn't, because he has now become used to it, and he has become conditioned to accept it as his fate to suffer like that. And I think a lot of people in our society have become inured to pain and to all the negative conditions and to criminality and insecurity. And they literally think that they can't change it, that no one can change it. And
Right.
and that's a very severe kind of psychological condition to be in. I think you also compared it to the Stockholm syndrome, didn't you?
I I've been thinking about this for some time, that I believe that many there, especially the white minority community, probably suffer. I'm no medical doctor or psychologist, but I speak to so many of the people, and it seems to me that many people there suffer from either some form of PTSD or Stockholm Syndrome from living in this environment. And it's very sad to me, because this is a result of 30 years of psychological warfare, an attack on people's livelihood, their mind, spirit, their very souls, and their humanity, what makes them human, because they have been told and treated as if they are less than, or they are evil, or they are responsible for things that they had no hand in, that they were not even alive for. You know, you don't choose where to be
you're
born.
quite right in that. You know, from what I've read up on the Stockholm Syndrome, the victim blames himself, and he actually
Right,
feels guilty about the situation. He feels that he's caused the situation. The perpetrator is perfectly within his rights to actually do him pain, you know, and to attack him and to
right,
keep him confined, or to threaten him and blackmail him and keep him hostage. Because yeah, in a way, we are hostages. Everybody in South Africa is a hostage. You know, we're being held hostage all the time.
right.
And then
That's
we
absolutely
when we got this new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, and he was held up to be our savior like that. You know, I can't help thinking also that is also perfectly consonant with the Stockholm Syndrome, because you see your torturer or your perpetrator, and you look up to him and you
true. Is
think
your
that
savior.
he's going to actually make things better for you, and he's
Right.
going to save you from the situation, like as happened in that incident in Stockholm in the 1970s when these bank robbers held people hostage, and afterwards the victims wouldn't even testify against the robbers
Felt sorry for
because
them.
they'd come
Yeah.
to identify with him, and we are identifying with our perpetrators and with our tormentors.
I would like to read a quote to you. And I want to read it because what you said about the perpetrators making the victims feel as if they are guilty and they deserve everything. That I know people shy away from the word genocide, but I have studied the definition of genocide as laid out by the world community, the Rome Statute, the Geneva Convention, and this is a factor in the 8 categories that make up genocide. Is the perpetrator group um, making the actual victimized group seem to be the perpetrators effectively, making people believe it. So this quote is from Elie Wiesel, right? And I feel that it is relevant
And
because,
he's the Jewish writer who wrote about the Holocaust and so on. Yeah, very
right,
famous.
and the U.S. International Genocide Act is named for him. So it says we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And I use that quote because, we so easily forget what we promised the world, that we would never ignore things like this again, yet we are.
Yeah, I
And
think
we name
you.
our genocide acts for, this man, but we continue to ignore all of the symptoms and all of the signs.
Well, I think that's a very powerful comment that you've just made there, Brandy. And I thank you very much for this interview, and we'll have others like that shortly, I'm sure.
It's always a pleasure, Dan, always.